2010, 2004, 2001, 2000, 99. These are all the reports. My involvement, well, I'm United. I remember when Fred Austin was, I think, maybe the second minister, and he actually, I think, been brought up Presbyterian, but he was Anglican. And when we joined together in the 70s, some people said, well, it should be United Anglican. No, it can't be United Anglican because Anglicans aren't united. There's high Anglicans and low Anglicans. I mean, even June has died, and Jean Hempel was very active. I have some pictures. Oh, and I found something in here that Heather and her husband were very active in the church. We're talking about Wilda annual report that states that Rowan was baptized.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and we baptized the same time as Sheila's son.
Oh, Brennan. Rowan's 19 now. Freddie's 21.
We had good times. Heather Jones.
Jones, nice.
Yeah. And I can remember when Mark was, I think, not sure which minister it was that picked him as the rector's warden.
Yeah.
He was the rector's warden, and he was quite surprised to be chosen as rector's warden. But that was good. And then I think it was after that he said, 5 years there won't be a church here. The people are dwindling away, and there won't be a church here. But she was a gardener.
And
she got that little corner by the kitchen.
Going. I see.
Yeah.
Ilmari.
Well, definitely I was here. My husband helped build a church because at that time they were working 6 days a week at the logging camp. Everybody worked at MB. And so he said he was building this house at the same time, and he said, I'll give you one Sunday I will work at the church, but after that I have to work at my own house. So that was what he did. And my job at that time was to go around and say, we're going to have a work party at the church. Could you make a bowl of potato salad, or could you make this, and then we'll feed them at lunchtime. And because I lived down the hill from the church, where the church was being built, I could collect all this stuff. I think we had a truck then, so I could collect all the food and take it up and serve lunch there. And basically, if you want to know about the church building, it was Mr. Gordon, who was Sandy Story's brother-in-law and a carpenter, and he more or less organized all these volunteers that didn't know that much about building, but they were willing. So that's how the little church was built. And I can remember at the time, it was Ivan Footer who was the minister. His wife was an organist, so that was a double duty. We always seemed in those days that we got a pair of the minister, and the spouse was the organist, so that was very handy. But at that time, the United Church was, I thought I would remember his name, Howard. I will remember his name, but he was on the Thomas Crosby was the United Church boat, and he would call in. And what I particularly remember about him was he didn't work on Sundays. So he wouldn't help with the carpentry work because, well, they're working on Sundays, so he wouldn't do that. I remember him, and then Bob Burrows was the next United Church minister, and he was in Alert Bay, and he learned how to fly so that he could fly from Alert Bay to here and have services every 2 weeks, I think it was, he would come. And sometimes we would have a service. At that time, there was a lot of people lived at the airport because the MOT and DOT people had houses there, and so there were a lot of church people there. So 1 week he would have service there, and 1 week we would have service. And eventually, when the church was finished, we had service in the Anglican Church, but it was a United Church service. And Jim Manley was another minister that lived in Port Alice. They had a resident minister in Port Alice, and he would come over maybe once every other week or something for a service here. So those are the names that I remember in the early times, and it was more or less like a pioneer place, you know, that when before the little church was built, or while it was being built, the missionary would have a service in the community hall, which is where the museum and library was built. If you look at that newspaper that's there with my husband's picture in it, it was when the museum was, the community hall was built very early before I came, and it was built from, there was, I think it was a cannery out in Shushardy, and so when it was finished, when it was obsolete, they took the lumber and brought it and built a community hall right where the museum is there now, right in the center of town. And that's where all the everything happened there. There were dances, there were movies, there were church services, there were weddings and funerals, and everything was done out of that hall. It was a real community hall. Tore the community hall down and built the museum. A good article about the land being donated for a community hall, and they wanted to make sure that it always went for community use. So that's when the community club actually turned the land over to whoever was building the museum library complex, so that it always would remain. I mean, there were a lot of companies that wanted to buy it on the main street, but they didn't get it. It was always to be for community use.
Okay.
Yeah, so I went to a few funerals and weddings and stuff there before the little church was finished. And then I can remember that Brenda, when they started selling off the buildings from the airport, they were Army and Air Force station that was there. And the first year that I came up here, I lived on the airport. I boarded with somebody there, and they had a big hall, which was like a dance hall with a good floor and everything. And then joined to that was a building which was the cookhouse. And so I don't really know how, but the Catholic Church bought it and moved it down the road. And then I think they had the second half of it was used for something else. They had it rented out. But then when we were ready for a bigger church, we got it moved, and it was moved by boat around from Beaver Harbor all the way around, and came up where a septic tank thing down there, and that's where they brought it up, and then it had to come up to on Granville Street where it is now, and the problem was the wires and everything, but they did move it up there quite safely. And of course it was it wasn't it didn't have 2 stories. It was just down level building, and so a lot of work has been done since then, raising it and putting in a furnace and all that kind of stuff. Originally there was actually, I think, a shower there too, and I always wondered why we didn't put a shower in, because we had people staying in there, like teenagers, for
That summer day
the
camp.
bell. They found the bell There was a church across the bay, and I've been trying to find out where it was and what happened to it. But there was a little Anglican church there, and the minister used to take a boat and go up to Cape Scott, do all the places where there were people living. And I think he started a scout troop. Anyway, I think probably if I got in touch with the diocese, they would have this history and maybe even a picture of it, because I'm very interested in Port Hardy that, started across the bay and all that. Unless there's two bells, I don't know, but the bell that I heard about was in that little church. When we had St. Columba, the little church, was finished, we thought we should have a bell.
Yes.
And there had been a bell. There were people that remembered the bell, because Mrs. Mellon, Holly's grandmother, was over there. She taught over there. She came from England to teach over there. So she's got all kinds of stories, or she had all kinds of stories. But this bell, and we found the bell, and this is it's a story, but the Nicholson family, if you heard about the Lyons family, they had a store and a hotel over there. I think that's where Mrs. Mellon stayed when she came here, and she stayed in the hotel to start with. And Mr. Lyons is he is Port Hardy, or he was Port Hardy, and he married one of the Hunt women. So all his descendants are Indigenous. So we found this bell was in Nicholson's house, and Mrs. Nicholson was a Lyon, so she belonged to the group. And so somehow or other the bell got into their house, and they found it, and so it was brought up to the church, hung in the church. So it's fallen down a couple of times. That's my story of the bell. That it was, I know, because I knew Mrs. Nicholson quite well, because she was the post office. Mr. Lyons came from Scotland, and then married somebody from married the married Sarah Sarah Hunt, and and it's Lyon without an S. When they moved across the bay, when they decided that the town was going to be across the bay, then they had a store and a post office, the Lyons, to start with, and then their daughter, Sarah. It's John's mother anyway. John Lyons. John Nicholson is still alive. He might be there this Thursday because they're playing whist, and Sally really likes to play whist, and he is one of the only people who will drive his truck down her hill to pick her up to go to seniors. So they're cousins. So that's my story about the bell. Maybe there were two bells. It could be. But we did have a lot of Utah people. Utah donated the property, and it's donated ecumenically with the Catholics and the Anglicans and the United, because they didn't want to be asked to donate more property to another church. So it's an ecumenical society. That's why we have to have a meeting once a year to make sure that it's registered as a society, owned by a society. So we did have a problem there when Fred Austin was the minister, and he didn't think that was too important, so he let it go by, and we had to go through a lot of paperwork and whatnot to get it reestablished, so that we could consider it as church property and not be taxed on it. When we started, they could have catechism classes or whatever the strictly Catholic things, they could still use the building for that. But they have the other half of the dining room for their church over at the airport.
So
We had a minister that was gung-ho on getting anything that could be got at the airport. It was kind of like a lounge. I know that when I lived there, I used to go and listen to music with one of the fellows that worked there. Anyway, and we had made application, or the United Church had, to have that moved over here so we could have a separate United Church about the same time as the other half. Well, no, I guess the other half went to the Catholics first, but anyway, it went to the Legion. Has actually come from the airport, and it was probably just as well. I was talking to Mary, and she said, I asked her, "Are you having services in your church now?" Because I know that he's quite, a leader in the church. Maybe he doesn't do it as much now that he's older, but he was doing lay services there. And so I said, and she said, "No, we don't have a priest, and we get the bishop comes up once a month or something like that." Different kind of religions. They each have various ways of doing things, I guess, that they're not always straight down the line. It's like with Anglicans being high or low. The higher, closer to Catholics.
at the church, you held various positions, and also with the community, you were like a long member with the Susquehanna choir.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Susquehannas. That was a real blessing to me because, I mean, 2 or 3 of the first ones were friends, and I knew that they sang and we sang. But it was the church that it was Brenda and Ivan Footer that really started Susquehannas, just going around at Christmas time singing carol, and then we developed from there. Brenda played the piano, and we developed from there. And we used to, anybody that had a piano, we would have meetings in their house, and then it got to be that there were so many that we had to find a place to meet and to have the concerts and stuff. It was it was quite interesting. And Elva, of course, Elva was very prominent, Elva Hogan, and she was the church organist as well as the director of the choir. Louise was here as well, Louise Berry. She I think she had a turn directing Susquehannas, and I'm not sure just how that worked, but I think she played the organ at one time too. 3 or 4 kids, I think. I looked at those pictures of the church, of the kids. If you could recognize, I took it to church one time, and I was trying to get Judy to identify, because she's in some of them. So there's 3 of her kids are there. Karen, did you know Karen Horn?
Yes.
I remember the church. Was Sally Dabb. She and her husband went to this course, and I thought it was quite funny that they had been married that long and they were taking a marriage course. Anyway, I hope it helped, whatever the problems were, to give them to people that might be interested. This one to sell. So you're going to find somebody that can identify those kids. I know the Eric, I think his name was Eric Bench. He's teaching in one of those classes, and his 2 kids. He was a social worker, I think, and I think he was helping with this marriage course that Helen Lamb, who was she was very instrumental in the church. Her husband was at the mine. You know, he was a geologist, I think, and yeah, and they had her mother living with them. Beautiful. But she was a nurse. She nursed. Who was the artist that was up here and did these? I don't know whether you would look at them or not. But that's Robert. This was the manse. We were fixing it up.
Okay.
And that's me with the paintbrush and Rainey with the paintbrush. And we're fixing up the manse. I think maybe it was before Jan, and that's Rainey and her husband. And this is St. Olaf's. This is the church at Quatsino.
Oh.
This wasn't to church. I think it was for Claudia's birthday. Buster was Harry Hole's uncle. He used his boat to go from Cole Harbor to Quatsino, and there was a place there that you know, you could have dinner there. So we went there for her birthday, and then we went over to see the church. Oh, that was interesting. Yeah, so I guess I'm the only one that's still alive there, because Harriet died young, and Zanny, that's Zanny's story, and Claudia. So, there's some tea, and I had very nice people bringing me cookies and stuff for my birthday, but I think maybe I ate them. Alana, when I was 18, she did 8 teas, 9 teas. I'm afraid maybe some of my crossword has got, or my jigsaw has got sucked up with a vacuum. The forsythia, did it come from Rainey's, or did she move? I get mixed up because everybody has spring break at different times. It seems that my time there was no spring break. Just had the 3 days Easter.
Yeah.
But now it's some people have it be like 2 weeks before. I had interesting thing when I had 2. I used to get them quite often, but I had 2 that were staying up in my addition there, up in the loft, and we had a shooting at the Seagate. I had a phone call. You have to get out of your house because this fellow is running around with a gun. We don't know where he is, and I don't know whether he had shot somebody, whether he'd killed somebody, but anyway, he was running around with his gun. So I said to the girls, I yelled up to them in the loft, we have to leave the house. Don't worry about getting dressed, just put your coat on, and we have to run out. I'm not allowed to take my car, so we have to run. And we actually ran to the manse because we knew that was good, and that was really funny. But it's the girl, one of the girls that was the student, she remembers the story, and a couple of people have said, oh, I met so-and-so, and they remember when they were staying at your house, and they had to leave without getting dressed, and they had to go, the next morning they went to the Bible camp, the Bible camp, go in their pajamas with the coat on. So I think we didn't know until quite late in the morning that they had found this fellow. Anyway, he was on a boat with somebody in the pub, and then he went back to his boat and got the gun, and he was scaring everybody. I think one of Holly's nephews or cousins was actually in the pub at the time and saying it was quite scary because this guy was just with the gun. They didn't know who. We used to have picnics in the back of the car, the bus. Yeah, I grew up in Ladner. I came here on my way to England. You haven't heard that story?
No.
Yeah. So, when I was teaching in 40. Well, I think I graduated in 47. Anyway, when I went away to teach 1 year because I had an aunt who lived in the Kootenays and she was a teacher. Anyway, away for 1 year, and then I came back home because my mother had died, so I came home to be with my dad, and I taught for 3 years at a little school close by. Well, I had to drive there, but close by. Anyway, at that time, if you had taught successfully for 5 years, you could go to England on exchange. And evidently, all my relatives on both sides of the family were in England. I really wanted to go and meet them and find out about the family history and everything. So the inspector at that time said, well, if you stay with me another year, I will recommend you and you can go. So one of the schools that he had was in Port Hardy, and I thought, well, I could live on the island for a year. I don't think I want to live on the island. I like Victoria, but this is way up in the boonies. Yeah, for a year would be okay. So I came to Port Hardy, and they hadn't finished building the Robert Scott School. They had started, but they couldn't, I couldn't teach there. So there was a school, there was a building that had been an operation building during the RAF, the RCAF. And so it was sort of like a school, had windows that faced it onto the runway. So I got they found a boarding place for me, a very nice couple, and I lived with them, and I taught grades 1 to 4, the children from Fort Rupert that were in that grade 1 to 4, and anybody that lived on the, that worked at the airport, their kids. So it was about half and half, and so that's what I did for the first year. And then I met my husband, and I was married the next year. So when Robert Scott was opened that spring, the parents didn't want their kids to go into different classes, so we just kept the class as my class, and just we bussed back and forth all the time. So that was. And it took me 20 years to get to England. And I must say, Port Hardy's been very good to me, and I enjoy living here, and I don't get down to Victoria that often, but anyway, it was, that was a change of plans and whatever. The relatives were 20 years older, but I did get to see people on both sides of my family and visited them quite often, and they came here, and it was a good thing. The first year I came here, I was very homesick, and so I would love to go to the post office to get mail, because it was, it was a connection to home, and everybody wrote in those days, and it was really great, and she was very kind. I remember that I had a friend that said, well, you should get a box, because they get paid according to how many boxes they have. And I didn't know whether that was true or not, but I thought, well, I better get a box. But I still would hang around until there was any chance of talking to her, because she was very kind. I guess it would be great-granddaughter is working at the post office. My secret, hard work out in the garden, and that would be a good thing to say. I can't say that it's eating properly, because I eat chocolate and whatever. I certainly grew up, I was the last in a family of 5, and we had a cow, we had chickens, we had pig, we had whatever. My dad, I guess we lived on about 2 acres. He was, he raised all the vegetables, and my mom had the flower garden, but she did do a lot of work in the vegetable garden as well. But the thing is, with my example, I am the only one in my family, I think. In my immediate family, there were 5 of us, and I think I'm the only one that lived past 55. We have an illness that runs through our family, and thank goodness I was free of it. My mother died very young. Her brother 2 brothers, 1 sister, I think, died. The grandfather died very young, and I've lost 3 brothers and a sister to the same illness, and 2, 3, 4 niece and nephews, like the next generation. My kids are very fortunate because I didn't have it, they don't have it. It's called Perry's disease. I think it's named after a doctor, and at first they thought that it was a form of, I know my nephew has it now, Parkinson's disease. It has some of the similarities with the mental changes and the stilted way of walking and things like that. So for a while they were calling it Parkinson's. They did more investigation when my sister developed it, and it has its own name now. So here I am, 93, and all these people died before they were 60. That was. I was talking on my birthday. My cousin phoned me, and she was 93 in January. So we got talking. Why did we survive, and everybody else died so young? So it was very, very interesting to chat with her, because we went back to the days when we were kids, and she would come and visit us in Ladner, and all the things. And she wanted to see where the memorial park was, because that's where, well, the cenotaph is there for the war, but that's where we had May Day. And the 24th of May was a big in Canada, and those we did the maypole dance. I've got pictures of when they did it here, and races and bands playing, and it was really something. So she wanted to know, to her family, to drive her out and she could see. And our house actually was 2 blocks on the same street, 2 blocks down from where the Memorial Park was. So I did, when I got home, I found an old map in the car that I could cut to pieces, and I marked it, because when I lived there, it was Victoria Street, and then they changed everything to avenues and streets and numbers, and I didn't know really what it was, but anyway, I found it. And so hopefully she can get her, when the weather is better, she can get her family to drive her out there and see where we did the maypole dance. Well, I wouldn't have found my husband, would I? No, not a regret. I had a boyfriend, but he went off into the RCMP, so no regrets at all. I probably would just still be teaching in this little school. I don't know what I would be doing, but I hadn't even thought about that. But I do get Facebook from a girl that was younger than me, but she's still very involved with the United Church in Ladner, and evidently they have concerts and stuff. So I get Facebooks about what is coming there, and I've got a picture somewhere of when I was directing a big choir, it was a production, it was a Christmas show, I think, and everybody from little kids up to the teenagers were in this thing. It was something about competition between Santa Claus and the church or something or other, and costumes and everything. And there's a picture of the back of my head. I mean, I wasn't a director, but I sang. But anyway, the fellow who was, I think he was either the principal or he was in the high school, and I think he was directing this whole show. Anyway, he said, well, I've been a director a lot of times, and you've never been a director, so you get in there and wave your arms around, the kids know what to do. So that's what it is. It's this whole production of kids dressed in costumes and the back of my head. It doesn't show my arms going up and down, but I did direct. And this girl said, well, my brother's in there. I can see my brother in the picture, but I was in the back, getting costumes and stuff and ready. So, but she has been a singer and really interested in the music in town, and was a teacher, and her mother was a teacher. Anyway, so that's very interesting because I've come across her, and that's kind of a reminder of the past. And she was, I think she was Patsy then. Now she's Patricia, and I think she's a grandmother, maybe even a great grandmother. I have a very interesting letter, and I'm going to find it for you to take. Letter about finding a church in Australia, and they were. I remember when I went there, we had the United Church, and what they called their church was the Uniting, because they were still getting more people. They thought when I said I belong to the United Church, he said, well, we're better than you are because we're still uniting. She said there was no Uniting Church in the place where she went. So I don't know whether she went to the Anglican Church or not, but she was very critical of she had the chat with the minister, and her summation of the whole thing was that the women could do all the work, but they weren't able to perform, take charge of anything. That after she expressed her opinion to the minister, there were 3 Sundays when she felt the sermon was headed straight at her, definite that this was not a uniting church. I remember the same thing with Caroline O'Kennedy, that was very active in our church, came from South Africa, and their opinions were very much male-female thing. Went down to the mainland with her husband. She went to a church, I think maybe it was Presbyterian. Anyway, it was sort of the same thing, that she was welcome to make all the pies she wanted to make and to clean and do this stuff, but no, they didn't want her opinion in Bible study or anything like that because she was a woman. We're lucky that we have fallen into a place where they will take our opinions. I can remember, not that I was born then, but I think United Church was it 1905? I can't remember, but I know the date was in June. Anyway, when the 2 churches came, when the Methodist, the Presbyterian, and the Congregational Church came together, United Church, that's why it's called United. 3 Protestant groups came together. And I remember the Presbyterian Church was on this corner, and the Methodist Church was a couple of blocks down. And what they did I don't know whether there was a Congregational Church or not, but the 2 churches, after union, we would have the church service in the Presbyterian Church. The Methodist Church was used for Sunday school. So the thing that I can remember, I don't know how old I was when I started going to Sunday school, but my sister would be about 5 or 6, maybe 7, and she was supposed to take me from, Mom would walk us to church, and she would go to the church that was having the adult services. My sister was supposed to take me a couple of more, I think it was only 1 more block down to Sunday school. But this one day she got involved with kids her own age, and I was alone on the street, and I was scared stiff. I must have only been 3 or 4 years old. I mean, I could walk, but anyway, I was crying, and this woman came out. The Methodist manse had been rented out to people, And this woman came out of the door and saw me crying and asked me what was wrong, and I said, I want to go to Sunday school. And so she just took me around the corner. But that's how I remember this woman. It was actually, they had the town paper, the Optimist it was called, and her sons ran that. So that's how I remember her. And it was very well. And I can remember going when they had Christmas concerts and stuff. I can remember, and then parties where we got dressed up. I can remember being a daffodil, made a costume with crepe paper, I guess, was a daffodil. And I was always very shy about, but she went to all this trouble making this costume, so I was kind of pushed forward. But yeah, there was, Sunday morning, the town was not very big anyway, but there just was nobody on the street. I was just so scared. I was all by myself. Sister, and she had wanted a baby sister so badly, but once she got me, I guess she got a bit tired of looking after me. There's two other stories about my sister, because she would be, I think there was 4 or 5 years between us. Anyway, when and everybody walked in those days. My mother never learned to drive a car, so when you walked down to the grocery store, my sister would see a woman, pushing a baby buggy, and she would look and she would say, "Mom, I think she'll sell us that one. I think we can buy that one." And so eventually, I guess Mom solved the problem by having me, so that solved that problem. But then I guess she wanted to be a cook or something, and I would eat anything that was given to me as long as it was sweet. So she would get in the kitchen, and Mom baked a lot, and she would mix up stuff, and she would put baking powder and baking soda and whatever in this that she could find to make these things that were, I don't know whether she said they were cookies or what they were, but as long as she put sugar in them, I would eat them, and then I would get sick. Mom would say, "Well, I can't understand why Lillian is throwing up," and Pat, my sister, she would just, "No, it's too bad, she must be sick." And if they had sugar in them, I would eat them, whether it was baking soda or whatever in there. Yeah, she was quite a sister, but she got tired of having me when she became a teenager, and I was still wanting to follow her around. That wasn't so good.
What would you want for your next birthday?
For my next birthday? Oh, well, I don't know whether I'll be here for my next birthday, or I'm just enjoying as much life as I can. I would like to get out and pull some weeds out of my flower garden. I don't think I'm going to be able to have I should show you a vegetable garden. Just a minute now, I've got something here that I'll let you read. This one. This is Verly that has written all these things for me. That is absolutely beautiful.
Lillian is 90 years. She broke her ankle in November, slipped on the frosty stairs, a round of doctors' hospital visits for repairs, got through Christmas with the help of friends and neighbors, had to wear a boot to boot, and accept the indignity of her infirmity, kept her eye on spring while mending stuck in the house, a wheelchair to get about. Her son carried her in and out if she needed. Doctor's orders she heeded, hurt like hell. Still she planted peas and beans in starter pots and planned a garden in her thoughts. And sure enough, one day she walked again. Not taking any chances, she used a walker and a cane. By June, she was back in the garden, a stair lift ride to heaven. She emailed yesterday to tell me all she'd done, picked a bucket of red currants, cooked and dripping before noon, cut the lawn in the afternoon, next day made jelly, set and sealed, and weeded the strawberries. Come by, she said. They're small but sweet. I picked a few for you, July 2020.
It's so sweet. I just think, yeah, so that's 90 years. So what do I want? Yeah, well, I think I would like to be alive. I would like to be as healthy as I am now. Maybe even if I think if I practice walking, I think I could maybe walk a little bit more. And I have got on the lawnmower and started it. And it's, well, I got my grandson to make sure that the battery wasn't dead after sitting there all winter. I backed out because Verly was here. So I don't do too much when there's not somebody. I've got this button thing, but it doesn't work outside. So I backed out. I drove around. I got to the top of the hill and I looked down, and I think I probably could have gone down to the garden, but it started raining and I just had my hair down. I can't, I mean, that was the excuse, I guess. So I backed up and parked it again. So I think Verly will get after me. She's a friend of my daughter, so we've got it all arranged so that she will come on certain days, and so far she's never been late. She's never been late picking me up. I think she's older than Paula. I think she's had her 70th birthday, so she will help me, and as long as she's here and she does lots of praising, which my kids do not do. They, like she says, oh, you know, that's really great. I walk from the front door out to the lilac bush because I hang the feeder on there. The crows eat all the feed. You know, is it still there? It's probably empty. The lilac bush there, you can see it hanging there. So it's full of, the crows empty it, but at least I get to watch them. And so if I walk there and back very carefully with the cane, I have been able to do that. So I'm hoping you can see how big the garden was down in the vegetable garden down there. Like last year I was able to cut all the grass except this bit here that I'm nervous about because it's a drop off. Maybe the grandson will do it this year. I don't get much help from my son when I say, you know, you could cut that thing down and I could have another one, because but I know the last time that I did try and get into it, it was difficult. I could fall through, probably rotten, but yeah, right, shows what used to be. But this, do you know what quince is? I have a quince bush, anyway. It doesn't get all flowery, looks more like shrubbery, making a screen where the fence ends, a japonica of some sort, a Japanese import. Strategically placed to add a touch of civility out back, behind the house along the forest edge. Nondescript greenery, just part of the scenery, where Lillian planted her store-bought potted primrose in the ground and puttered around. This long preamble to suggest the years, the many summer seasons that I passed right by the little tree, dragging the hoses on my way to water the roses. I would stop to water the sweet peas at its feet in the summer heat, and took no notice of its slow growing, until last summer's end, when I was startled to see that shrub loaded down with fruit, like little green apples, even at summer's end not ripe. Still I picked before the bear's arrival, not sure even a hungry bear would choose for his survival. Left them ripen in the window of the furnace room for weeks. When the crisp green took on a faint blush and yellowed, Lillian said it was time to make jelly. Chopped the small fruit unpeeled. It was all pit, not much meat on it. Boiled hard with sugar until it foamed and turned bright pink. She showed me how to skim the waxy skin and pour it into hot jars and seal it at the kitchen sink. It's quince, I think. And I know that's what we call it here. I know in Australia they have quince that you can actually eat. You know, you probably do in Philippines too. I can remember it. It tastes awfully. It just, if you bite into it, it kind of draws all the moisture out of your mouth, and you're like this. Anyway, we had, when I went to school in Ladner, and they did some turning around between the high school and the elementary school before they built what the elementary school where I went. We were in the old high school. So if you came in the front gate, which we weren't supposed to, we were supposed to go in the back, but there was a sidewalk up to the front door, and there were bushes on either side of the front door, and the principal's office was up above so he could look down, and we weren't supposed to be in that area as students. We were supposed to be around the back. Anyway, whenever a new kid came, we would say, you're not allowed to go around there, but if you sneak in, you can take an apple or this fruit, and it's really good, so you should sneak in, and maybe the principal won't see you and you won't get into trouble. Well, when you take a bite of this thing, it just draws all the saliva out of your mouth, and it's awful. It's just really awful. So when you make jelly out of it, you have to put lots of sugar in it to, but it does turn into a pretty pink jelly. It's really, really nice. But I think I might have made it 2 years in a row. But like she says in this story, it sat there as a shrub, and it has prickles on it. And it did have flowers, but we never noticed the fruit before. And then all of a sudden there was this fruit. But the second year, she picked the fruit, and she was going to make the jelly, but I don't think she ever got around to put lots of sugar in to make it gel. But it was a pretty pink color. But that's quite fun. In Lillian's sun-dappled yard, wildflowers drift across the lawns. Lakes of Monet blue, a brocade, pools of pink and white, English daisies weave through the green, borders of frothy blue forget-me-nots between, black wings whisper where we walk. So, she's very good. She wrote there was a friend of ours who died in his house on Stories Beach area. He'd lived there for quite a few years. He and my husband shared an apartment in Vancouver at one time, way back when. And anyway, he came to Port Hardy when her family came. I'm not sure how they were related or friends or whatever, but he lived alone in this house in the beach, and I guess there was somebody that called in to look after, to make sure he had food and stuff, but he was by himself, and he just died. And she wrote a poem, like a farewell to a good, and it was really lovely. Just a very short poem about that he just sat down after he'd I don't know whether she said he'd had his coffee, but he had his hair combed and whatever, and he just was finished and just died. Something like Stella, she just died where she sat. Well, Pam used to be really good at doing my hair, but I don't think she was doing facials. That was Pam McGillivray and her husband. Walking without my cane. I have this project going which makes my house very untidy. I have all the gazettes from, well, this one is 85. I've got 90 and 91, but that's Ian Horn. I don't write as well as what I used to. My writing is very scribbly. That was Christmas one Sunday and one year, and that's when Mag graduated. Beautiful. Oh, the crow's got something. Can you see him on the pussy willow tree? He's got something that he's eating. They've been bugging the eagles. I think they must be nesting because I've seen them picking up little bits of wood, and I guess maybe the eagles are interfering with their nesting habits, and so they're chasing the eagles away. Quite funny. Like, I'm so far up that I don't really think I have to worry, but anyway, I had somebody come and knock on the door. You have to go. That was to go to the swimming pool. So I didn't agree with them, but the second time they came back, I thought, well, I better get out of here. So I went down there, and actually I think there had been a concert or something in the Civic Center. So I sat in the swimming pool, and where you go into the swimming pool. And I sat there, and a few people came along, and I talked to them, but actually the place where they had the refuge and served coffee, didn't serve coffee where I was full of people from Sulquati. So I didn't go in there, and finally I thought, well, this is ridiculous. They didn't seem to be getting any information. So I got into my car. I had to walk by this fellow that had brought me or made me go. I said, I'm going to my son's place. He lives way up on Hunt. The tsunamis, I went and I don't know whether I even knocked on his bed into probably Parker's bed or somebody's bed that was empty. And then it must have been a Saturday night, because I think I got up and went to church. I don't know whether he even knew I was there. I must have phoned him at least once, but his voice, I think that people were automatically wearing masks in those days. I don't know. I don't think you were supposed. Now, after that, I think you had to be tested before you got on the plane. Was it the next Christmas? I don't know. It was after when things had loosened up a bit. Was it last year? Not this Christmas, but the year before. Anyway, my daughter's son is married in New York. So they had come to Vancouver, and then they all came up for Christmas. We all got tested before we went to. Lori was going to cook Christmas dinner, and we all got COVID. we were all survived. It was a milder form by that time. By myself after they left, and realized that, well, I had to go and get the test where you go to the hospital and get it, and I did have it. So there was one time when I was feeling scared because I was alone and I couldn't breathe, and I did get the ambulance to come, and they tested me and everything and said, well, they can't do any more than this at the hospital, so we think you're okay. If you want to go up to the emergency, we'll take you up there, but there's no reason. I got all the vaccinations and the boosters and the ordinary flu shot, which I didn't used to get at all, but then Rini said, well, no, this must be 5 or 6 years ago. He said, well, John's got his flu shot, and he says he's kicking me out if I don't go and get mine. I thought, well, I might as well go too. Well, I'm getting the flu shot. I'm getting any kind of shot they want to give me. Good times. Yes. Thank you for coming, and you're off too.
Well, I'll see you again before I go, because I'm not going till Sunday.
Do I get a hug?
Yeah.
With your glasses? Have I ever told you that I went to school with Michael J. Fox's mother? She was Phyllis Piper in those days, and we were graduated from high school together, and we were in the drama group together all through high school. And I won the drama prize. I like to tell that part of the story. Anyway, just seeing Michael's picture reminds me of that, and what a great childhood he had, and what a good family he came from. And that's all.
Thank you, Lily.